the most important part is the product tastes and it works and it does, and then people also fall in love with the entire mission. But if you don't have that core, which is kind of also a bit of the soul of the brand, this community, you get a bit replaceable, I would say. It gets intense. Over 10 years, it's like a relationship if you have co-founders and if as a brother, of course, additionally, but I think that's part of it, and we enjoy the ride. It's a big idea, but the idea is always like, we will say idea is only worth a few percent. The execution is what will create the value. I'm actually sometimes surprised that there's not more companies coming from Vienna.
Welcome again to the 8th episode of Banking on Success, the podcast of Raiffeisen Bank International. I'm here again with my beloved colleague,
Elica Kavrakova, Head of Institutional Clients.
My name is Daniel Rath, and I'm back again today with a new guest for you, a very interesting one, a co-founder, entrepreneur, Chief Marketing and Commercial Officer of waterdrop, Henry Murray. Welcome.
Great to be here. Thank you.
Welcome.
Henry, we are very interested in your story, but you will tell us in a second. First, we would be very much interested that you give us an overview on waterdrop, the product. And for those, unfortunately, who are not watching us, but just listening here, they can't see, so we need to a little bit explain to them what is happening. But you brought some variety of your product here with us. We also have prepared a water, says the name, waterdrop, so you drop something in. Can you give us a little bit an overview of the products you have, as well as what we do in order to taste them now?
Absolutely. So we're a hydration company, and we make people drink more water. How do we do it? With our small hydration cubes that you can see right here. Basically, they're combined fruit and plant extract that we compressed into one little cube. I'll show you. This is iced tea peach. They look like this. And you basically can take them. I'll show you one over here. You said you wanted lemon, right?
Yes.
You can take one, open it, drop it into water. You already said it correctly. That's why it's called waterdrop.
Okay.
Oh, dude, here. You already hear it.
How many flavors do you have?
We have over 20 actually. So we have different ranges. Some of them are for taste, some of them with an enhanced functionality, like we have some with caffeine. We also have some with electrolytes, and we also have some with herbs. So depending on what you want to drink throughout the day, we offer you a solution, always without sugar, with some vitamins inside, and with a great taste. So that's the concept. And we believe that you don't need a pre-filled beverage. You don't need it in a bottle or a can or anything. The water is usually there. We live in a country where great water comes out of the tap. In other countries, there's a lot of ways to filter water. All you really need to have a great tasting beverage is the essence, and that's the taste and the functionality. And that's the concept of waterdrop. So we make drinking fun.
So I just
convenient.
wait now that the drop
How long do we need
resolves in the water, and then it's ready to drink.
Yes, it depends a bit on the temperature of the water, but it will take a couple of moments or minutes, and then it's dissolved. You don't have to stir it. You don't have to shake it. You don't need a spoon. You don't need a specific bottle to drink it. You just drop it into water. That's why it's called waterdrop, and then you enjoy it.
Perfect. Until we wait that we can taste it, I'm looking forward on that one. We are very much interested in your story. You founded waterdrop 2016 together with your brother as well as a friend. So 3 of you founders. How come you go into a business that is, I would say, quite saturated, and you're quite successful? So tell us a little bit about you and your story and how you came up with this great new product.
So the idea to waterdrop actually started in 2015, the year before we founded the company, which was a true story. It was my brother and our mother on a plane from Singapore to Hong Kong. And you know how it is in a plane. They ask you what you want to drink. They'll bring you soft drinks. They'll bring you water. Our mother loved cola. My brother didn't. So they were sitting in front of the cup of water, and they were thinking, okay, why is there not something that I can now put into my water that tastes great, that's healthy, that doesn't have any sugar, that I can carry anywhere in the world without like going through security control and like pouring it away, and that also looks good and is kind of a brand and is fun. So they were thinking, okay, what is there? And then you look at the market and you understand, okay, there's syrups, something sticky, you have to adjust the quantity, you have powders, you might have supplements like from medicine, but that's not really something you want to enjoy. It's more about transporting something. So we realized there's not really something out there. And that idea was so intriguing that Martin, during his MBA at INSEAD at the time in Singapore, started researching more. I was working at the Boston Consulting at that time, and our third co-founder was still in London as a product designer, actually. So none of us was from the beverage industry. The idea kind of got traction because we realized, wow, there is actually an emotional insight and a rational insight. The emotional insight is it doesn't make any sense to ship all of these pre-filled beverages across the world. Like, why is this happening? Because big companies are controlling the supply chain. They're very successful at it. They're selling a nice brand, and it's a supply chain game. And you have local beverage brands because everything beyond the border probably won't make sense commercially anymore. And the rational insight is you're also looking at an industry that is a $600 billion industry. You said it's very saturated. It's probably one of the most competitive industries out there because it's very fast moving. So there's also an opportunity to disrupt this. So none of us comes from that industry. I studied history and business. Martin was from a business background. Christoph is an architect and a designer. So you might want a long drink in a bar from us when we mix it. So we had to find some experts. And we found a company in Germany, the leading manufacturer of fruit and plant extract. And Martin went there and pitched the idea, basically from a PowerPoint deck. He said, this is interesting. We can imagine doing this, but we also want to be part of the story. We can develop this with you, but we'd also potentially invest. So we already had a very strong partner, then started bringing in some angels, and little by little, we quit our jobs and committed to the journey and went all in.
No, that's really amazing. Now, question of curiosity, because we've been discussing before we started this talk about the zero drinks. Is it really without sugar? Because also in fruits, there is the natural sugar. So
yes. So in the cube consists basically of citric acid, and then you have fruit and plant extracts, and bicarbonates, and if they react with water, it basically dissolves. That's what everybody knows from medicine products. Now, what we did, we took out all the bad stuff out of these products, put in the good stuff, meaning real fruit and plant extracts. Mm-hmm. There's no sugar inside. First of all, there wouldn't even be enough space to do sugar, but we said sugar should not be part of hydration. You get so much sugar across all kinds of different food and other things in life that we think in the part of daily drinking 2 to 3 liters of water, sugar shouldn't be part. There's different versions because you will taste the drink and it also has a sweet taste. So some of the drinks we sweeten. You can sweeten with stevia, you can sweeten with sucralose, or you can go completely unsweetened. We see the most...
By the way, it's nice.
It's good.
Oh, you did the testing already.
I did, and I need to admit I'm drinking first time waterdrop. It's really nice. Yeah.
Give it a try.
You got me. Yeah.
So this is iced tea lemon.
That's right.
It's a popular flavor. And what you have in there now is real tea extracts, lemon, and then some sweetening to also round it off. So it gives you a pleasant drinking experience, and it also has vitamins inside. So the philosophy is it tastes good and it does good.
Let's a little bit stay on the product. How did it start? I mean, it looks now professional, everything around, very smallish. I guess the first product must have been a little bit different, or how was the development there?
So the first big milestone of waterdrop was actually getting the product done. There were 100 people from the industry, from the beverage industry, from the pharmaceutical industry who said, you cannot do this. The way you're imagining this product, having it as a cube, having it in a single packaging, having it with this type of ingredients, with this shelf life, forget it. There's a reason why the things they are like they are. Weil es immer schon so war. But we challenged that. When we developed the product. We had a first prototype, and we really put a lot of effort into it. And the first product we got out in 2016. And there's a famous quote we live by. It's by Reid Hoffman, who founded LinkedIn, where we hopefully will post this podcast. He said, if you were not embarrassed by the first product you launched, you probably launched too late. So we went out with the first prototype we had. We went out, we got customer feedback. It was so important because it wasn't tasting that great. Dissolving time wasn't good. Packaging wasn't ideal, but we did go out. We got the customer feedback. We started collecting and then we optimized. So we're in the FMCG industry, but we treated it almost like a tech company releasing new versions all the time, which was only possible because our commercial model was also going direct to consumer, meaning building a website where we control the warehouse and we do the shipments directly to your home, not starting at a big retailer and then being locked in. And if you want to change something, they will, rip your head off.
Would you say actually that you disrupted kind of the market? Like compared, I'm thinking about Red Bull. They disrupted the market. I think it was 87. So would you claim this for you as well? And what were the biggest challenges at the beginning when you started carving out the space for waterdrop?
So I would say that we have already disrupted the market is a very big term or claim. So I think we are disrupting the market. 10 years of hard work might make you look like an overnight success, also like other companies you mentioned. But what we are doing is we kind of are developing a new category in the hydration space. So nobody knew, we call it a microdrink. So what is a microdrink? Is that a category? Is it a product? This question till today questions buyers if we talk to them at the retailer. So what are you? Are you a drink? Are you a powder? What are you? So we are defining a new category, what we call the microdrinks. And yes, we want to disrupt the industry. We want also the big guys to rethink how they're doing things, potentially change to different systems, and maybe not shipping the full liquid everywhere. And that's what we're aiming to do, and that's what motivates us, is like changing the industry and doing it for the better.
Allow me one more question, and because we've been speaking before we started about my trip to US, and I know that you've been expanding to US.
Yes.
Now, question: is there any big difference between entering the US market, so between US and Europe in terms of marketing strategy?
Yes. So we entered the US in 2021. So it was COVID, and the main difference, because if you think of innovation, the pace of innovation in the US, especially in the consumer goods industry, is so high. You will have a new brand, a new product, a new functionality. Like every few weeks, you will have something on the shelves, very well executed. In Europe, I have to say it is a lot slower. In our space, for years, innovation was putting a new label on a drink and marketing it in a nice way. So we kind of got away with being an innovation in Europe for a very long time, for over a course of a few years, meaning going to retailers saying like, this is a new innovative product. We don't know exactly what category it is, but we're kind of shaping a new one. In the US, they love innovation. They'll try it very fast, but they care about it at first. But the next step, they will care like what value you're delivering to the customer, where do you fit in the competitive landscape, how strong is your brand, and how are you growing, and what are you doing for me, for the consumer there. So it is brutal. You have to then, you might get an entry ticket with an innovation.
But then you need to perform.
But then you need to perform. And then you're in there. And then you're being compared very, very fast, because we go into retailers and we say, we want to be in the hydration shelf. In Europe, many retailers don't even know what a hydration shelf is, because like, are you in soft drinks? Are you in syrups? Where are you? In the US, you'll find a hydration shelf, meaning with small syrups, with powder solutions, maybe with a soda stream, etc., very often in many different retailers, and there will be a specific buyer for it. For us, the retail landscape or the product landscape is not as sophisticated, which is a good thing because you can lead the category change. It was also a bad thing because there's not a lot of things you can compare to. So it's a give and take, I would say.
Yeah, that's very interesting, kind of corresponding to more or less the mindsets on the different sides of the ocean. Yeah?
But just to follow up here, so is a lot of competition better for you to develop the product or be more focused on it? Or is it easier in Europe? You say, okay, there it's easier to run our expansion.
I would say a healthy set of competition is very good for us because we're not recruiting from our direct competitors. We're not recruiting from companies that would do something similar like waterdrop. We're actually recruiting from the $600 billion industry of people carrying home soft drinks in plastic bottles or buying all of these other products. that's where the real value is, not by trying to take some market share of an innovator who's doing something similar. So actually we welcome a lot of players into that industry and into that space, because we think the more awareness for different type of consumption, the more awareness for powder-based solution, for instance, is very good for us. However, if it gets very, very competitive, like you would see in the US, you have to be very good on all dimensions to succeed, and you can't just maybe have 2 or 3 in there.
Another topic, as we are both in a customer business, we have a little bit more customers than you have, but we are much longer in the game. So very interesting. Since 2016, I understand you came up to 5 million customers, quite a community even.
Mm-hmm.
How did you build on that community and also grow that as fast, as well as how do you entertain them? Are they constant shoppers in your product? How does this work?
So waterdrop is definitely a community-driven brand. This is based on the fact that when we started with our website and then a pop-up store in Marilferstrasse. We knew exactly who the people are who are shopping. We always had this magical number in our head that we once read in a book, and it said, like, if you have 1,000 happy customers with your brand, you basically cannot stop the brand anymore, because they're advocates, they'll talk about you, and they'll like really amplify your message. So we kind of always tried to push at the beginning, like, how do we get to this community of 1,000 people that will go out there and talk about waterdrop? So we started with social media, and that's where we really grew the brand in a way that we had it in a systematic but in a very personal way. We started with Facebook groups. We had community events in different cities. We engaged with them. We talked with them. We called them. We had a full community love team that we basically built. And that was amplifying this message. Of course, not all consumers will want to be so engaged with a beverage brand. Like, you will only have a tiny percentage of your base that really wants to engage with you, talk with you, give you feedback, maybe write something into a group. The rest is very happy if they have a great product and it's working for them and they can shop it in a very convenient way. But if you don't have that core, which is kind of also a bit of the soul of the brand, this community, you get a bit replaceable, I would say.
So, listening to you now, what would you say was the biggest lesson from marketing perspective when building up the brand in all these periods?
So I honestly have to say, when we built the brand, it was not part of the strategy to build this community-based brand. We actually never were as audacious that we thought people will care about this. They will like go, and we have people that have tattoos with waterdrop. I don't know if you have somebody out there with an RBI tattoo, but there's people out there.
At least.
Yeah, I was by the way thinking, because this community thing I liked very much, but obviously that's more a retail topic. But also having the customer community, it sounds so good. I'm amazed.
I mean, I experienced some of your community already. It's a different type of community, but in this consumer community, we never thought this would be possible, that they would care as much. So it wasn't a strategy, but it happened for us. Our head of communications back then, we started she's still with us, Bettina. We started a challenge for a flavor we launched in 2017. And we said it's the 30 days clean challenge, because we launched a flavor that was clean, and we created a group on Facebook back then. It was the most important social media channel. And we said, like, hey, tell us what you do over 30 days, refrain from sugary drinks, use some waterdrop in there, exchange. And then the challenge was done, and we suddenly had like 700 people in this group. And then they were all sad. They said, like, so what happens now? What's now after this thing? And we said, like, okay, what happens now? So we renamed the thing. We said it's not the waterdrop clean challenge, it's the waterdrop club. And suddenly the waterdrop club was there, and this community now had a home where they exchanged and they talked about the brand, and we gave it ideas, and now it's up to almost 100,000 people in different countries. And the learning kind of for us that stuck with us is we often tried things without knowing exactly what will happen. We were not afraid of failing. This also could have tanked. And this drive to trying and experimenting and failing again. And once you have something that works, your growth or your traction channel, then you double down on it, and then you go full on, and then you just be consistent and strong on it and do it for years, and then it will just amplify. That's, I would say, in marketing, at least for us, one of the biggest learnings.
But still, you started Facebook online, you said, and now you're going to brick and mortar, or you have already stores there.
Yes.
Which is in a time where retail has difficulties, different areas, a very interesting step. What's the reasoning to do so?
So for us, there's two types of brick and mortar. There's our branded and own retail. So we have around 45 waterdrop stores. You will find them in cities like Vienna, London, Berlin, etc., where we really give the brand a home, where people can experience the full thing. Because if you would ask me for a second marketing learning in the FMCG or the beverage space, I would say product trial. People want to know how it tastes. The first thing you guys asked me when I walked in, you said like, I want to try this. So the stores are like machines where people can experience the brand, taste it, and find their flavor. So we're not trying to build our own retail network like you would see from other brands. We're really trying it to experience the brand and experience the product and place it in the right locations that people can actually go there. It also gives us a lot of trust with consumers because they now know, oh, there's a place I can actually go. And it's not just a website. It's not just waterdrop.com. The second part is going into third-party retail. And we did that very early on because we listened to our customers and said like, look, I love shopping on waterdrop, but I go to my grocery store every week. I would just love to just pick it up there and not pay the shipping, etc., etc. So it kind of brought us to rethinking a lot of things because we had to change so many things. The first product of waterdrop was a box of 48 drops. It looked like a tablet. Looked like Christopher, product genius, designed something. It looked like an Apple product tablet. It was absolutely not suitable for being on a shelf in a supermarket. So we had to develop a smaller format, a 12-pack. Suddenly think about, okay, how does this actually look like on a shelf? And we tested it. We tested it with Pipa, was our first customer in Austria, still are. And we started selling there, and it worked. So our omnichannel strategy was born. We said, let's put the best-selling products that people really want to have near to them where they shop, be it in a grocery retailer or a drugstore like DM, all of these guys in Germany, Rossmann, and also have this full range of products on our own website and in the stores and be where our customers are. And that's kind of how we did it. And to your question, I think it's also commercially driven. The market potential of then being in third-party retail, once you have built the brand, is just also much larger. So we see the future of the brand growing in third-party retail a lot more than it can grow in its own e-commerce ecosystem. Still, people shop 10% online. The rest is also offline when it comes to like grocery and where we place the product.
I'm surprised, and now maybe to ask in that connection, what is the kind of the age of the typical waterdrop consumer? Because I would intuitively think it's like, and also because you've mentioned the marketing channel via social media, it would be more like for younger people. But is it true, or it's your product is bought by across the age ranges?
Yes, so it is bought across the age ranges, but we do have customer segments that kind of have evolved. We do have very young consumer that is interested in the trend and what we're doing on social media and the new flavor additions and that follows that. And that's also where the brand is often positioned. And then we have a customer segment which is dominantly female still. So we have a larger split of female customers and consumers buying because they think and plan more when it comes to hydration, what am I drinking, etc. So we resonated more in that audience. Also not something that we did deliberately in the beginning. We never said this is a brand gearing more maybe towards women than men. And then it also depends on the category. But for instance, like this product is an energy product or this product is an electrolyte product. So it really depends on the use case. This is now used for sports. So we have a different demographic than buying a product that is relevant for sports or tennis or wherever we're placed, or an energy or caffeinated product. So we have different customer segments, but our younger customers are kids and the oldest consumers are way beyond 80, 90 because they love the flavor. So we have that group. When we look at just who buys the most, it will be a slightly older audience than the 20-year-olds because they also have the most buying power between 35 and 45, for instance.
Interesting. What I particularly like, because again, I need to admit, I'm confronted first time with a product. The the sustainability is inherited in the product. Does this mean that actually the overall also growth strategy of the company is based mostly on the sustainability as such, or what else is part of the growth strategy?
Offering a more sustainable solution in the beverage space is DNA of the company. The reality is with consumers is that is not the first reason why they will purchase the product maybe, and it's also not the reason why they will repurchase the product. The reason, and we know that from the data, is that the product tastes, it tastes good, and it does what we promised for them. Makes their daily hydration simpler, more convenient, also fun and tasty. However, our consumer from us expects that we act in the most sustainable way, that we reduce as much as we can with what is unnecessary. And I believe a new FMCG brand founded in these times needs a purpose and have some contribution because everything else that is made up in hindsight gets very tricky, and consumers not only want to get behind a product, they also want to get behind a company in the best case. So it is very important for us, but we're not leading all the growth just with sustainability. The most important part is that the product tastes and it works and it does, and then people also fall in love with the entire mission.
We immediately jumped into the product to see how much we're interested in the company. A little bit, I would be curious still on you. You have a very interesting CV. Your name a little bit indicates you're born in Scotland, but raised in Salzburg, Austria. You have done international studies next to Vienna, South Korea, as well as China. Also have worked in private equity, consulting, a lot of different stations, and then jumped into entrepreneurial business. What shaped you most in that journey? And is there a decisive moment where you say, this is the reason why I then initially got an entrepreneur and founded something?
So there was no, I would say, decisive moment when I said, now this needs to happen. Our background, our mother was from Scotland, our father is from Salzburg, and we grew up in Austria. So we're half Austrian and Scottish. If I go to Scotland, nobody would recognize me as a Scottish person, and here I have the benefit of saying I'm half Scottish. We had a grandfather who was an entrepreneur in Scotland, where we kind of got the sense of what it means and what it takes and what can be created, coming from nothing really and creating something in a completely different industry. It was logistics and paper. So we kind of, that was kind of an inspiration that was there, but still very abstract. My brother and me, we did go to business school, then also in Vienna, and the natural thing was you don't really know what you want to do when you come out of business school. And I at first said, I'm done with business. I want to study something. I actually want to study something where I learn or immerse myself into it. So I went for history in London. I knew this will not be my profession, but I just wanted to experience it versus going through the university and saying, when's the exam? What do I have to deliver? And do it. And after that, I still didn't know what to do. So consulting was always a very attractive option because I knew I would learn a lot.
Smile again. I'm sorry.
I'm waiting for the explanation now.
No, I knew I would learn a lot. I knew it will always be a very good step because I would learn a lot. Some people say others pay for your mistakes early, but you learn a lot, and it usually opens more doors than it probably closes. And when I was in consulting, and speak for myself, you also get to know how big corporations work. You get an insight as an external into FMCG companies, car companies, governments, financial institutions. And when you come out of university, you always see these big brands and companies. You think there must be magic going on there. This is crazy what they're doing. And then you get to a really high level very early on and can work with people. And you see, wait a second. They're all normal people. Everybody's, in German, we say, cooking with water. Mm-hmm. There's not so much magic in there. It's just people doing it. It has been created. It can be done. There's not a barrier for something big to be created by something that I cannot see. So it kind of took away the fear of trying to start something, and doing it in a way that is also thought in a very big way. So I think if I hadn't been in consulting, I wouldn't have seen the path of how this can actually turn into something big, because I might have thought like there must be some barrier that you cannot get over at some point. But there wasn't. And so I took all of this experience and also some banking experience, which taught me so many great hard and soft skills, and really being able to then apply that. And you have to relearn a lot of things and also forget a lot of things when you go into an entrepreneurial journey, because nobody cares about your slides anymore. It's all just about doing. And that's what we did. But combining that experience with that drive, I think was, for us, a very good combination. And we also had a co-founder who came from a completely different background, which was very complementary.
Speaking of co-founders, wanted to ask you, how does it work amongst you co-founders, and how this, the interactions and the relationship among you guys kind of evolved over the years?
So our constellation is quite unique, because with Martin, my brother, who basically started with the idea and the concept, and the founding idea was the first one to push. Then Christoph came in, an architect and product designer who was sitting in London, who first started kind of helping and working on the idea, but got so excited, and they all got excited about it, that we said like, okay, I want to be part of this. And then I came in, and the goal was always for Martin and me, we always wanted to do something at some point together. And I was still in consulting, and we said like, okay, now is the moment. Either now or it's not. So I jumped, and we started. Now, over the years, at the beginning, you try to do, everyone does kind of everything, because you just have a handful of people in the room. So yes, you can write a title, but everybody's hustling and everybody's trying to make things happen. Over the years, I think it's important that, you divide who's responsible for what, where do decisions get taken, how do you kind of collaborate. And at the end of the day, if the vision is aligned and the values of the company, and we have that between the three of us, and Martin and I as brothers also share the same background, you can create a very strong bond. And if you then divide different things, you can be super, super effective. But of course, like with every business partner or family member, it gets intense. Over 10 years, it's like a relationship if you have co-founders, and if as a brother, of course, additionally. But I think that's part of it, and we enjoy the ride.
Cool. As we are here in banking on success, I need to come back a little bit to financing terms. Good product, interesting, but startup. How did you convince first investors, angel investors, to come on board?
So an angel investor is a very specific type of investor, because they usually buy into the people more than they buy into the business plan or the market. So it was really about people believing in us. Say like, okay, I like this idea. It's a big idea, but the idea is always like, we will say idea is only worth a few percent. The execution is what will create the value. And so we found people that, of course, believe in the idea, but much more believe in the people. We say like, okay, I can see you guys executing something and building something. It might turn out slightly different than what it is now, but I invest into that. And the first angel investor was actually a BCG partner that saw the potential and then invested. And then also our supplier, which had a fund, kind of funding ideas like that, also came in, and we were able to build this first set of great investor base. And what happened over the years is that we have such a committed shareholder base that they brought in new shareholders, they brought in different partners. One thing led to the next. We didn't go the classic startup finance way. We don't have like the common venture capitalists on the cap table that could kind of force us or to drag us to sell the company. We have very long-term oriented partners, and then also funds. And yeah, I would say it was a journey. We didn't go by the playbook. It was also outside of Austria, to be honest. Everything came from international. Okay. Because in Austria, we didn't get so much, I would say, trust or benefit of the doubt at first when we started out.
Interesting.
We had a harder time raising in Austria than we had internationally, which is different now, I believe. 10 years ago was a bit harder than it is now.
And for the future, how do you plan to fund the future growth?
So good news is on waterdrop, after many years on the market, we invested into our production. We invested a lot into the brand. We invested into the distribution, into the team. So we had to take some very big bets. That's why we also have been, we've raised significant amounts to fund the journey, now bringing the company to around 150 million euros in revenue. But now the company is also operating profitably. So really the question of bringing in new capital is always about how do you accelerate? And being a profitable company in that space that has very plannable revenue also opens other ways of financing where banks get very strong partners suddenly, because you can now talk about very long-term investments and financing options that we probably didn't have in the past. So we're actually very confident and very happy about how we can look at funding the journey further. And we're now the masters of our own destiny, which we're very happy about.
One more question, kind of in this connection. You've mentioned at the beginning that US is the market where, likes innovation. And you've mentioned just before that in Austria, at the beginning, you didn't find the financial support, but you stayed in Vienna as a company. So why? What made you stay in Vienna, and how generally, maybe in to enlarge the question, how do you perceive the startup scene here in the city and in Austria in general?
So first of all, Vienna is a great place to live. It's also a great place for us to start a company, because you can there's great talent here. You can bring in great talent. Actually, we maybe didn't get our first investors from Austria, but we did get grants. The city of Vienna was very supportive. AWS was supportive. So there was a lot of ways to start something good here. So there is an ecosystem and there's a good base. We always considered ourselves as an international company from day one, and we were operating in e-commerce. So it wasn't really that important to maybe be, I don't know, in London or maybe in Berlin, where a startup would start. So we kind of used all the benefits of Vienna, but also turned to the international elements that were important for us. I would say that's maybe harder for other people, because you naturally tend to have a network in that different city, but we already were moving around before in different places, and our investor base then kind of broadened. So we never saw it as a disadvantage of being in Vienna, actually a very strong advantage, because you can really focus on what you're doing. And if you know how to operate in that system, you can get a lot out of it. So I would say on the funding side, it was difficult. On the other side, there were a lot of supporting elements. So I'm actually sometimes surprised that there's not more companies coming from Vienna and Austria. I do believe, though, that what it takes is great success stories, because every time there's a success story, something new comes out of it.
Someone else.
And entrepreneurs, and they will fund the next journey, and it kind of becomes a snowball effect. And I think we need more success stories coming from Vienna. We're working hard to be one.
That's true how we see it also when we look at you. Still, if we look at waterdrop in 5 years down the road, so where would you see it? You have now above 300 employees. You said 150 million turnover around this. I guess the big brands call you up every second day and ask, you want to join us? Where do you see the next growth path potential for the group?
Our mission is global. We're at a state, I said before, it's a $600 billion industry. We're basically a drop in the ocean at this point. So there's a lot of ground for us to cover. In core Europe, in the US, where we only have we're starting out small there, in the Asia Pacific region. And over time, we will replicate and we will expand into these regions, but we want to do it at the right time, at the right pace. Yes, you might need partners here or there, but our mission remains the same. We will focus on strengthening the hydration ecosystem. So everything we're doing around the product, the drops, the bottles, the hydration tracking app, the filtration that we offer. So all of that will just become stronger and stronger. And in 5 years' time, we have obviously, we still have the same mission and vision. We'll be in many more countries at the higher scale, I would say. There will probably be more players that have joined our mission. But our goal was never to join the industry, but more change that industry. So this is also comes back to how the company was financed. We didn't build the company to sell it out very fast to an FMCG player. We probably could have done that honestly early in the journey already, because yes, you will get calls, yes, you get a lot of attention, and your concept is appealing and fits in the portfolio, but we're not trying to please anybody. We're really trying to build something, and that's the path we're going. So hopefully in 5 years' time we sit here again, and I'll give you the same story, just a little bit bigger.
Beforehand, we've been speaking about the consumers, but now I'm curious also to understand how are the waterdrop employees? I mean, what skills does someone need to have in order to work for waterdrop?
It's a great question. When we ask our team members when they join, why they joined, like the majority of people actually say because of the mission of the company. So there's a very purpose-driven generation or type of people that are attracted to work at waterdrop. And that is very important, because what we're doing is not a playbook we're following. We need people who kind of believe in something, are then willing to take risks and to try around. And we often honor the willingness more than the ableness that you might bring to this job. Of course, if you hire a senior graphic designer, you cannot start from nothing. But if in a lot of different roles, there's a lot of learning by doing, because that's also the philosophy we have. Nobody, Martin, Christopher, we don't come from this industry. We haven't done this before. So we try to bring in people who also have that spirit, and then also bring in people that have great skills and great areas of expertise, give them all the context they have, and then get out of their way and let them do their magic. That's really the goal. So I would say, in short, the people at waterdrop are very purpose-driven. They're hungry for change, and they're also thinking very entrepreneurial, because there's no playbook to how we're doing it, and that can match very well with your own mindset, but it can also be very frustrating or challenging, because often that means a lot of things changing, flexibility, chaos, all of that around. So that's definitely present in an environment like that.
But a very international team, as far as I get to know.
Yes. So we have, I think, more, like just in Vienna, more than 50% don't speak German. I think we have over 50 nationalities across the entire base. So we have a very global mindset, I would say.
In terms of internationality, we have a lot in common.
True.
Yeah,
True.
between our two companies. One last question again from my side, Daniel. Sorry, I have too many questions now.
No, it's perfect. It's
First
I
time
have
with
two more.
waterdrop.
I have two more.
Oh, you have two more. Very
let's
good.
Go ahead.
And it's going again to kind of a more personal question. What advice would you give to your younger self for the moment before setting up waterdrop? What would be that one advice?
Before setting up waterdrop?
Yes.
One advice we kind of followed, and I talk to people who want to start something very often. And I always see a pattern where mostly they're already in a job or they're working somewhere else, and they have this idea and they start working a little bit on it. But the reality is, starting something is just very hard. You might get initial traction, but the moment something starts, you will get hit by so many different weird things that just get so complex, and you just lose a little bit of interest, and it turns out being a lot harder than it seems. So one thing we did is, when we started with waterdrop, we really then committed to the journey. We said, like, there's no plan B. This has to work. Like, we're doing this now for a set of time, and we'll do it right to the end. Like, we will drive it into the ground or we will thrive, but we'll see it through, and we're not looking back. If you're in a more comfortable environment and you're thinking about, will this work, will this not work, I think it's very hard to create something that gets momentum, because you will have to surpass these valleys of tears and pain and all of this stuff. And if you always have a backup scenario, people will naturally revert to that. So I will speak to a lot of people, and they will tell me about this and that, but they don't know exactly how. And I say, like, if you really feel strong about it, and it comes usually from the gut, then you have to commit to a time and do it, and like expect everything to happen in a very different way, but you cannot look back. So burn the ships and go ahead.
I will remember this. Thanks.
Pour your heart into it. Finally, the question I always ask, I come to in a second, but one curiosity in the preparation I saw, you're also ambassador for a sports watch. How does that fit together? So is this a coincidence, or have you been sports professional before that we overlooked?
So at waterdrop, we luckily work with a lot of ambassadors, and so I got to see how we work with influencers and ambassadors. And one day I was approached by Samsung, and they said they're looking for people who they're looking for people for this campaign and all their business solutions and their new phone. I said, it's great, but I'm not an influencer. Like I work in a scale up and I do this. And I said, this is exactly what we want. We want real people who are working in it. Like, and can we bring you in for this campaign? I said, sure, I love it. So I switched from iPhone to Samsung, and it was actually a 3-month thing. And out of that, it kind of matched and it worked. Mm-hmm. And this is now for, I think, almost 3 years. And it has grown, and we've done different campaigns. And for me, it's great because I'm now suddenly on the other side, in front of a camera, working with a brand. And it's actually teaching me a lot about how we also do things with different partners and ambassadors and athletes on a very small scale. But I actually love it, and it's a lot of fun. So it's kind of nice to be in that ecosystem.
Cool, good to know.
And thinking you're not an influencer.
Yes, I think I'm not an influencer, exactly. And the benefit is I obviously get great matching products.
Yeah, true. Looks nice. Last one, but probably the answer I know already, kind of. We always ask, you have a very challenging job, founder and touring around, globally expansion. When and how do you recreate and recharge your batteries to, again, have that power that we have heard now about you?
So I've come to realize for a long time we were sprinting the marathon, and this is now for 10 years. So we did have to find, or I had to find, ways of balancing different things that they kind of work. We're still operating at a very high pace. At some points we all started to have families, so you also have a completely new role evolving at the same time. But I wouldn't say it's like balancing the one thing with the other. I think you kind of have to find this harmony. So you got to find things that give you energy, not drain energy. And family gives you energy. I've tapped a lot into sports. Cycling and tennis is my choice, and that's where I find a lot of energy. And I always realize if I see I'm not committing to that, then usually something is off, and then I also get really bad at all the other things. So I always sign up for big events and competitions like a marathon or a big bike race, because the greatest inspiration in life is the deadline. And if a race like that comes up, you got to be fit, and that kind of helps me also then to push.
Then, thank you for being with us today. Very insightful, very motivating, cool product. At least I got very positively infected. So
I am totally.
Now I know. And thank you to our audience today for joining us, and stay tuned for the next episode of Banking on Success.
Raiffeisen Bank International. Make it happen.